Good evening. You're watching the News at 6 with me, Shan Russell. The News at 6 is all about the day's biggest developing stories, and we'll be filling in on them over the next half hour. But first, the headlines that we're tracking right now. Markets take a hit ahead of a report on the US jobs data. The Sensex loses 563 points. The IMF, though, says despite the market volatility, India has good short-term growth prospects. On the eve of Teachers' Day, the President takes a class in political science for students. The Prime Minister holds a lively interaction with them in New Delhi. The Prime Minister attends a three-day coordination committee meeting of the RSS and the BJP. The RSS declares the government's direction, commitment and dedication is good. And as migrants continue to pour in, United Nations calls crisis a defining moment in history, says European Union must accept up to 2 lakh refugees and mobilize forces to help. The top story this evening, the market slipped further to a fresh 13th month low today amid continued sell-off from foreign investors. Sensex in the Nifty fell over 2% after making moderate gains on Thursday. Weak global markets and fear of a US Fed rate hike impacted the sentiments of the traders. The rupee also weakened further against the dollar.
A day after breaking a 3-day losing streak, weak global cues pegged back the stock markets once again on Friday. There was heavy sell-off from foreign investors despite the government announcing relief on minimum alternative tax. Sensex fell nearly 600 points to its lowest closing figures in 13 months. The Nifty plunged more than 100 points to settle below the 7,700 mark. The rupee also weakened by over 20 paise against the dollar. Analysts said there is a major global risk aversion in emerging markets due to a possible interest rate hike in the US and concerns over slowdown in China. Pace of reforms and weak monsoon have weighed on the market sentiment as well.
There's a lot of nervousness in the entire globe because of what has happened in China in the past 1 month. So I think in this backdrop of nervousness, the expectation or the wait for an important data, a very important data, is adding to the nervousness, and this is what we are seeing in the Indian markets today.
Well, markets are deep in red today. They are down, but Sensex is down by more than 500 points as I'm talking to you. And the reasons are the same reasons which I told you a few days back. In the absence of any positive trigger, there is a huge unwinding happening. The foreign investors, they are getting a little disenchanted with the market.
Concerns over a possible US Fed rate hike hit the Asian markets too. Japanese stocks plunged to a 7-month low, with Nikkei losing over 2%. Major European markets were also down by nearly 2%. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And Finance Minister Arun Jaitley is visiting Ankara to attend the 2-day meeting of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors. The ministers will review ongoing global economic developments and discuss measures to tackle them. RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan will also take part in the meet. India has expressed concern over the fears in the global economy triggered by the devaluation of the yuan and the slowdown in the China. India says the competitive currency devaluations are a major threat to global stability. It will ask leaders to analyze measures and develop a global safety net. Ministers will also look at financial market regulations and also the global fight against black money. Now, the International Monetary Fund has a word of caution for the world economy. It said that flagging growth in China and the stock market volatility pose a threat to global economic growth. However, it has indicated good times for the Indian economy owing to softer commodity prices. Take a look at this report.
Despite the present volatility in the stock market, the International Monetary Fund feels that short-term growth prospects still favor India. Its report, Global Prospects and Policy Challenges, says that inflation has enough to create room to slash policy rates.
We have been talking about 8, 9, 10% GDP growth, but it could be between 7 and 7.5%, but definitely we will be not impacted so severely as many of the countries may be.
The IMF sees a greater impact of the China slowdown on the global economy. It expects global economy to expand 3.3% this year, slightly lower than 3.4% in 2014. The US is expected to grow 2.5%, up from 2.4% in 2014. The Eurozone by 1.5%, nearly double 0.8% seen last year, while China is estimated to grow by 6.8%, down from 7.4% in 2014. The troubles in China have sent prices of commodities like oil and copper sliding. This has hit exporters of commodities like Brazil and Russia.
India, because at present its rate of growth is going up, is slightly better. But when it will come in competition as far exporting to different countries are concerned, India will have a problem in their exports.
The IMF has also expressed concerns on the balance sheet stress in Indian corporate and banking sectors. The government has already announced it will provide 70,000 crore to banks as fresh capital over the next 4 years to keep the banking sector robust and propel economic growth. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
And we're joined by Madhavan Narayanan, Senior Associate Editor at the Hindustan Times, to help us understand, Madhavan, as far as the IMF's prediction is concerned. Now, given the volatility in the stock markets, given the fact that there are investors who've been pulling out of India, and there has been a trend of a global slowdown as far as the economic growth is concerned, how is India poised and how is our growth story poised?
I think the important thing to remember is everybody is talking about the US jobs data and the fact that interest rates hiking may take place any time now in the US. But you know, this has been there in the for months now. So that is not really speaking the new factor. As I see it, India is poised to be a high growth economy. But earlier this week, we had the GDP growth figures for April, June that showed up at 7%, which was well or not, if not well, significantly below the estimate or expected estimate of 7.4%, which basically, in data terms, raised questions on the growth story. And then just yesterday, the chief economic advisor spoke about a deflation threat, or day before.
Right.
And there is also the Chinese overhang, in which the yuan devaluation and what is being discussed at Ankara, the threat of a competitive devaluation scenario, these are together sending jitters on the prospects, because the bet was on India. Now, they are calibrating the reality with the bet they took, the foreign investors. And I think that is where the, I wouldn't call it a mood of gloom yet. There is volatility in the market. There is a bearish mood, but it's not yet a sustained plunge. It's basically a rollback of some of the what I would call very optimistic estimates.
Right, and one of the key investors, for example, Jim Rogers, he also pulled out, and the argument or the reason given was that you cannot invest on hope alone. Has there enough been done? Because this government came in with the promise of economic reforms, of turning it around. The red carpet was literally rolled out as far as getting foreign institutional investors in. But has that happened? What's the data telling us about that?
Yeah, the simple fact is that Jim Rogers makes statements which are as flashy as his bow ties. I mean, he likes to make statements which are which make people sit up, and they are also a reality check. He has a sense of realism, but I think sometimes his pessimism is as overplaced as the optimism among others. So, yeah, but I would look at the fact that some of the other brokerages, such as this CLSA yesterday, downgraded the Sensex target. So there has been a very calibrated approach to measure the growth prospects of India. So, for instance, I would look at the fact that the bank loan, the NPA problem of Indian banks, which is amounting to about 3 lakh crores or 4% of outstanding loans, is a matter of concern. And the fiscal deficit or the government has to spend in order to recapitalize the banks, and the banks have to clean the balance sheets and then lend money, and then the growth will happen. And therefore, in terms of timeline, it takes a while for the growth to show up. So maybe the FIIs decided, look, the party is still 2 years away. Why are we still hanging out at the, the gate? So they decided to probably take it a bit easy and maybe come back later.
All right, talking about the government's reform agenda, now, as far as the parliament itself is concerned, we saw what happened in the monsoon session, and that has resulted in the economic agenda sort of being slightly derailed. Do you think that the government can get it back on track, can get enough of positive sentiment going?
Good question. I would point to two signals this week. The first signal was the Land Acquisition Act, in which the Prime Minister seemed to have backtracked, but I would rather call it a sense of realism in which he's begun to reflect the ground level consensus. On the other hand, the Environment Ministry seems to be moving ahead on environmental clearances and setting clear procedures. So we're getting a bit of mixed signals there, but yes, Make in India is an ambitious project. It's not going to happen overnight. So some of the, let's say there was a huge rosy mood last year. The optimism still is there, but in terms of rollout, these are not overnight things. So I think what is setting in is not a mood of gloom, but a sense of caution and realism.
All right, interesting point you make over there, Madhavan Narayanan. We'll leave it over there, but thank you very much for coming in and helping us understand all these numbers and figures as far as India's growth story is concerned. Thanks so much for that. Well, moving on now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with students from across the country ahead of Teachers' Day, which marks the birthday of the second President of India, S. Radhakrishnan. At a special function in the national capital, around 800 students and teachers from different Delhi schools interacted with the Prime Minister. Students from other states also joined in as well via video conferencing. Modi also released a commemorative coin of 125 rupees and 10 rupees in honor of the late president. Here are some of the excerpts from the Prime Minister's interaction.
मेरा अनुभव है कि शिक्षक की पहचान विद्यार्थी होता है। विद्यार्थी अपने कर्तृत्व से, अपने पराक्रम से अपने गुरुजन का नाम रोशन करता है और शायद ही दुनिया में कोई ऐसा व्यक्ति होगा जो इस बात को स्वीकार न करता हो कि उसके जीवन को बनाने में उसकी माता का और उसके शिक्षक का योगदान न हो। हर एक के पास कैरेक्टर सर्टिफिकेट होता है और जो जेल में है उनके पास भी होता है। इसका मतलब हुआ कि ऐसे ही एक कागज बांटा जाता है या एक रिचुअल हो गया है। तो मैंने डिपार्टमेंट को कहा है कि कैरेक्टर सर्टिफिकेट के बजाय एप्टीट्यूड सर्टिफिकेट देना चाहिए। डॉक्टर अब्दुल कलाम जी को तो निकट से हम लोगों ने देखा है। वे भी भारत के राष्ट्रपति थे और बच्चों को बहुत प्यार करते थे और यानी सचमुच में उनका वो पैशन था। उनको किसी ने पूछा था एक बार कि आप क्या कैसे याद रखें, तो डॉक्टर अब्दुल कलाम जी ने कहा कि लोग मुझे अगर याद रखना है तो टीचर के रूप में याद रखें। मेरे लिए अब ये उनके सिर्फ शब्द नहीं थे। राष्ट्रपति पद से मुक्त होने के दूसरे ही दिन वे चेन्नई चले गए और चेन्नई में जाकर के क्लासरूम में बच्चों को पढ़ाना शुरू कर दिया। एक प्रकार से एम्पावरमेंट मूवमेंट है डिजिटल इंडिया। ये कोई तामझाम नहीं है कि हमारे देश में इतने मोबाइल फोन हैं या हमारे देश में ये है। ये सामान्य नागरिक को एम्पावर करने वाला बड़ा मिशन है। डिजिटल इंडिया हम सब अब उससे अछूते नहीं रह सकते हैं। वो हमारी जिंदगी का हिस्सा बन गया है और हमें भी अगर गति बढ़ानी है, ट्रांसपेरेंसी लानी है, गुड गवर्नेंस की ओर जाना है तो ई गवर्नेंस का उपयोग करना है। और मेरा एक ड्रीम है कि 2022 जब देश आज़ादी के 75 साल मनाए तब तक घरों में 24/7 बिजली होनी चाहिए। हमारे देश में 18,000 गांव ऐसे हैं कि जहां बिजली नहीं है। तो मैंने हमारे सरकारी अधिकारियों की मीटिंग ली, 2-3 मीटिंग कर चुका हूं अब तक, और मैं उनके पीछे लगा हूं कि मुझे 1000 दिन में नेक्स्ट 1000 डे में 18,000 विलेजेज में बिजली पहुंचानी है।
And President Pranab Mukherjee turned professor on the eve of Teachers' Day, taking a class on political science. He taught the subject to senior secondary students of a government school in the president's estate. The president's lesson included details about the writing of the Constitution of India and the historical background of the issue. But probably the best part about his lesson was when he took a trip down memory lane and shared with the class his own experiences as a student. He told the students listening to him with rapt attention that he was an unparalleled naughty boy who owes all his success to his mother. The idea of this special class came from Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. It was part of a Delhi government program, Be a Teacher, where renowned personalities from different walks of life take classes and inspire students to achieve excellence in life. And after the special class, the president also interacted with some teachers in a separate session, saying that there was a need for social recognition and financial security for teachers. The president said that this would inspire them to perform better. He also especially thanked teachers across the country for their contribution.
If we can inculcate in a larger way amongst the teachers and the students, and make the society to recognize the values of the teachers, perhaps it would be possible to attract bright students and talented persons in the teaching profession. But they are the teachers of the society at large, people at large. And they will also have to feel confident about the potentiality which they have in creating the responsive citizens which we require to take our rightful place in the Committee of Nations and to make the country, the vast multitude of humanity, more than 1.2 billion people, to be dynamic, progressive, prosperous, healthy, and educated.
Time for us to take a very quick break. Coming up on the other side, a day after the Samajwadi Party pulled out of an alliance in Bihar, the JDU and the RJD chief hold talks with Mulayam Singh Yadav. More on that on the other side.
Get live Rajya Sabha session. News, views, reports and analysis you can trust on social media. Subscribe, follow, like Rajya Sabha Television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now, the RSS has said that the Modi government is moving in the right direction and that it was not reviewing its performance. The remarks came after a 3-day coordination meeting between the BJP and the RSS. The RSS also rejected criticism that it was acting like a remote control, saying it was only giving inputs to ministers who are Swayamsevaks. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also attended the meeting on the final day. A broad range of issues were discussed in this first of its deliberation. The key issues have included deliberations on internal security, the Naxal problem and the situation in Jammu and Kashmir.
14 महीने हुए हैं और भी समय है और बहुत सारे काम करने हैं. दिशा ठीक है, उपलब्धि अच्छे हैं और आगे बढ़ेंगे. जितना हुआ है इसमें हम दिशा ठीक है, लगन ठीक है, प्रतिबद्धता अच्छी है. इस दृष्टि से हम कह रहे हैं कि ये आगे बढ़ने चाहिए, बढ़ेगा. इतना ही हम इनपुट्स दे रहे थे.
The opposition, however, rejected the RSS argument and insisted that it stood exposed as the hand behind the running the government.
Despite the claims of RSS that it's a social and cultural organization and has nothing to do with politics, it's at arm's length. It's not at arm's length as far as politics is concerned. It's a tight and firm embrace of politics. The hypocrisy of RSS and BJP stands fully exposed.
Now, in Bihar, the anti-BJP Grand Alliance parties are in damage control mode. A day after the Samajwadi Party's exit from the grouping, parties said that they hope to persuade Mulayam Singh Yadav to roll back his decision. RJD chief Lalu Prasad and JDU President Sharad Yadav flew to Delhi to placate Mulayam Singh Yadav. They remained confident that the alliance will remain intact despite the Samajwadi Party's decision. However, the trio did not discuss the seat-sharing issue.
जो गठबंधन है उसे मजबूत करना है, बनाए रखना है, उसी की चर्चा आज सारे समय हुई है और गठबंधन पहले भी था, अभी भी है, आगे भी रहेगा।
माननीय मुलायम सिंह यादव जी हम लोग के गार्जियन है, अभिभावक है और देश और दुनिया भर में जनता परिवार के इकट्ठा करने में काफी योगदान है माननीय मुलायम सिंह यादव जी का।
In a historic judgment, the Delhi High Court allowed naval women officers to be permanently commissioned, which means women officers can now stay with the Indian Navy till they retire. They will also be entitled to full retirement benefits. So far, the Navy was limiting women officers only to short service commissions of up to 14 years. The court verdict comes after some women officers alleged gender discrimination in the Navy. In a similar High Court ruling in 2010, women were allowed permanent commission in the Army and the Air Force. Now, Greenpeace has decided to challenge the government's order to cancel its license. Greenpeace India said that the group's work was not affected as 70% of their funds came from Indian donors. The centre had cancelled the NGO's registration under the Foreign Contribution Regulations Act. The government said it has found holes in Greenpeace's balance sheet. From now on, Greenpeace would not be able to receive any kind of foreign donations, which comes up to 30% of its overall cost of operations. Time now to take a look at all the other national news and updates in Nationwide. Former Coal Secretary H.C. Gupta and 4 others were granted bail by a special court in a coal block allocation scam case. The case pertains to alleged irregularities in allocating coal blocks in Jharkhand to 2 Jindal Group companies. The court will hear the case next on the 21st of September. At least 39 people were injured when a passenger train derailed in Cuddalore district of Tamil Nadu. A medical train was rushed to the spot and special buses rescued stranded passengers. The train later left for its destination, but rescue work is still on to remove the 5 derailed coaches. Over 50 children were hospitalized in Madhya Pradesh's Chhatarpur district after they consumed a midday meal. Parents allege that the quality of the meals is not checked. In fact, the government formed an investigation team to look into the matter. Pakistani troops violated ceasefire twice overnight by resorting to small arms firing. Mortar shelling along the Indo-Pak border in Jammu and Kashmir districts. In Poonch district of Jammu and Kashmir was retaliated by the army. There are no reports of injuries to anyone. Some international news now, and terming the migrant crisis as a defining moment, the United Nations has said that the European Union must accept up to 2 lakh refugees and mobilize force for the crisis. UN's remarks come ahead of a EU meeting later this month. Meanwhile, hundreds of more migrants were rescued by Italian Coast Guard.
Stalemate between migrants and Hungarian authorities continue as hundreds remain stranded at a railway station near Budapest, refusing to go to a nearby camp to process asylum seekers. They insist on being allowed to remain on the train bound for a border town near Austria instead of going to refugee camps. And the United Nations has backed them. The world body's refugee agency said the stranded migrants have a right to know where they are being taken. The UN also wants the EU nations to accept up to 2 lakh refugees as part of a common strategy.
people have been misled in terms of where the trains are going, that would be a terrible thing. I think that information has been one of the weak problems, or one of the main problems so far, and it has to be addressed. People need to know, they deserve to know what's in store for them, where they are being sent, and to make the right decision.
Close to 400 migrants were rescued on Thursday and brought to shore by Italian Coast Guards. So far, close to 3,000 migrants have been rescued from sea by Italian Coast Guards in the last 24 hours. Amid the crisis, EU ministers are set to meet later this month to chalk out a strategy to find a solution to the crisis. After Germany, United Kingdom's Prime Minister David Cameron is also under pressure. US has welcomed the EU's initiative.
Well, we have to do our bit to help. Everybody has to do their bits to help. It's true, this is really difficult because it is the greatest humanitarian crisis that we have seen on our continent since the Second World War.
Meanwhile, the Syrian toddler who washed up ashore on Thursday has been buried with his brother and mother in Kobani. The image of his body lying on the shore has now become the face of the human tragedy in the worst migrant crisis in Europe. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And Chinese President Xi Jinping met his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Beijing yesterday. Both leaders pledged to enhance cooperation and bilateral ties. Jinping said China will develop the Sino-Russian strategic partnership. Both nations signed a series of agreements in fields of foreign affairs, infrastructure, education, science and technology. While Xi said China and Russia were the main battlefields of the World War II, the Russian President Vladimir Putin praised Jinping's message of peace at the rally. Some sports now. The fourth day of the US Open saw a major upset in the women's 9-seed Gabrielle Muguruza crashing out of the tournament. The 2015 Wimbledon finalist was stunned by Britain's Johanna Konta 7-6, 6-7, 6-2 in 3 hours and 23 minutes. It's the longest women's match in US Open history. In the men's draw, Britain's Andy Murray fought hard, coming back from 2 sets down to beat Frenchman Adrian Manarino. The third seed won 5-7, 4-6, 6-1, 6-3, 6-1 in stifling conditions. Top seeds Roger Federer and Stan Wawrinka also advanced to the third round. Second seed Federer defeated Belgium's Steve Darcis 6-2, 6-1, 6-2, 6-1. And fifth seed Wawrinka eased past Korean teenager Hyun Chung 7-6, 7-6, 7-6.
Forehand closes the deal. Roger Federer.
Time now for all the other sporting action in Sports Beat. Indian tennis aces Sania Mirza and Leander Pace entered the second round with straight sets victories at the US Open. Sania in Hingis defeated the American pair of Caitlin Christian and Sabrina Santamaria 6-1, 6-2. Pace and his Spanish partner Fernando Verdasco eased past Germans Florian Mayer and Frank Moder in the opening round. The BCCI has moved the Supreme Court seeking clarity on whether former President N. Srinivasan can attend its meetings. The former BCCI President turned up to the meeting in Kolkata on August 28th, forcing officials to abandon the conclave. Australia defeated England by 59 runs in the first game of their 5-match one-day series. A quick-fire 71 by Matthew Wade helped Australia post 305 for 6. The hosts started the chase well, but batting collapse saw them lose their last 7 wickets to just 94 runs before being bowled out for 246. Well, that's all from us. Bye.